Our headlines today.
Now today, have we got a lot of stuff for you?
Tributes pour in for the legendary radio DJ Steve Wright, who's died suddenly at the age of 69.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, the 14th of February. Our top story today, tributes that are being paid to the legendary radio presenter Steve Wright, who's died suddenly at the age of 69.
Millions of listeners tuned into the radio host who worked on BBC Radio 1 and Radio 2 for more than 4 decades. Our media and arts correspondent David Silito looks back now at his career.
Steve Wright in the afternoon. All right, now just after 2 o'clock. Now today, have we got a lot of stuff for you?
Steve Wright in the afternoon, a programme that spanned more than 40 years of radio history.
Stand by studios, action.
It was only just over a year ago that it came to an end, but this afternoon, Radio 2 was the bearer of some sad news.
It's really hard to know what to say about the news of Steve Wright's passing, except we are all absolutely devastated.
It is a shock. It was only days ago listeners heard this sign-off from his Sunday love songs.
And I'm back for more love songs next Sunday. Oh, is he really? Are you moving? Oh, great.
And for those who've worked with him over his years at Radios 1 and 2, he was more than just another DJ.
From my personal experience, he was a very warm, genuine man who was concerned about the people he worked with, but an extraordinarily creative presenter. I mean, he was a real one-off. You know, there was no one else who sounded like Steve Wright. A lot of us tried to be as good as Steve Wright, but no one was that good.
Steve Wright,
That style, the posse, Mr. Angry, voiceover man, it was zany, funny, and at its peak it had 7 million listeners a day.
And the bride is 107. I think it was just because it was something different. It was slightly subversive. There's a little bit of satire in there. And it wasn't like, there you go, that's the great sound of.
Behind the fun and laughter was a radio perfectionist.
He wasn't necessarily the character you heard on the radio, full of life and effervescent and this frantic, frenetic delivery. He was a quieter person. I would say almost an introvert, quite shy. And that meant that when you felt you were friends with him, it was very, very real. This cacophony of sound that was his show was so full of life. I think that's why we're all finding it so hard, because we can't believe that life has gone.
A feeling echoed by so many of her Radio 2 colleagues. Jo Wiley said people were feeling devastated. There have been many tears, she said. We've all worked with Steve Wright for years and years and years, and it's just very difficult to take in that he's no longer here. Paul Gambaccini described him as one of the all-time greats, with an approach that was unique in British radio. Ken Bruce said he was totally shocked. They'd been planning to celebrate his recent MBE. And Zoe Ball described him as our radio friend, our inspiration, master of broadcasting, the godfather.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to Top of the Pops.
Because while he did present Top of the Pops and a few TV shows, his home and where he shone was behind the microphone. Steve Wright, professional, slick, funny, and a master of the art of radio.
Steve Wright there, who's died at the age of 69. We'll look at some more tributes throughout the programme this morning, and do get in touch if you've any particular memories of listening to Steve on the radio. More on that for you a little later. Now, friends and colleagues of Steve Wright have been paying tributes to the radio DJ, who's died at the age of 69.
Yes, his family confirmed his death with deep sorrow and profound regret in a statement just yesterday.
Let's speak now to Steve's friends and former Radio 1 Roadshow host Tony Smiley Miley Miles and the broadcaster Mike Reid, who presented alongside Steve in 1976. Good morning to you both. And I know he was a friend of both of you, so I'm sorry for your loss this morning. It's hard to know where to start, isn't it, when we talk about his legacy. Give us a sense of what difference he made. Tony, let's start with you. And talk to us about what made him so good at what he did.
Well, I think what comes out with Steve is that he was a radio genius, that he communicated with you on the radio with his characters, with like his famous Sid the Manager, Mr. Angry. And when he came out on the road show, he would bring those characters to life. And for me, he would ring me and say, Smiley, I need to make these characters live. Hundreds and thousands of people would come and see him. They would travel the country. And Steve had this way of communicating. And I think that like yourselves and everybody grew up with him, through the ages, and that he was part of our lives in the afternoon on Radio 1 from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. He had you hooked. He was the ultimate communicator of radio.
And Mike, one of the things that now we're having this conversation about Steve, one of the things that I think many of his loyal fans and listeners won't know is how hard you have to work to make radio sound easy. And that's the thing that I think that strikes me now, listening to the tributes to him, how incredibly dedicated and meticulous he was, making something sound like it was almost happening by accident. That is a real skill, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, but he was a radio person, don't forget. A lot of people go on the radio, they're put on the radio, they speak, they play music, they do it, it's okay. But Steve and I started, we were radio people. It ran through us like a stick of rock. That was the thing. We said to our initial boss, well, don't you want to audition us? He said, no, you'll be fine. Put us together because of our names, Read and Write. We broke the rules. He fired us every week. And we thought, well, we've had a good run. We've had a month. We've had 2 months. That's fine. We've had a good crack at it. And eventually we came through. We started doing characters back then, having fun, experimenting. And he said, listen to the veterans and copy them. And we thought, no, thanks. No, we'll do it our way. And we both ended up going to Luxembourg, going to Radio 1. And yeah, you're right. Steve was a ringmaster. He was good at pulling other people in. He was good at packaging things. And he worked all day at it. He worked tirelessly. He was a radio man, not just somebody that turned up, did the program and went home. It was in his mind. He was thinking of ideas the whole time. He was a radio person. And we always had this strange communication. He'd phone me sometimes. He'd go, Reed. I said, yeah. He said, it's right. Oh, what do you want? He said, nothing. Bye. So we had a very, very strange relationship. We never socialized outside the studio. We were totally different social animals. Steve was a very, very private person, never went to functions or anything like that. Wasn't his style, wasn't his thing. He preferred to be in the center of his web, operating on the radio. And the radio is about communication, engaging, making people feel they're part of it. And he was very, very good at that.
Tony, we've just been looking at some images of the Radio 1 Roadshow. It was iconic. It looked absolutely bonkers. What memories do you have of working with Steve on the Roadshow?
Well, the Roadshow in itself is iconic and is legendary. And, there were certain DJs, Radio 1 DJs, who could bring what they did on radio, bring it to the mass audience. And Steve... my memories, Steve would talk about he had geese on the radio, okay, fictitious. And we'd have geese on the roadshow. Now, this is radio, do you know what I mean? Steve and like Mike and Gary Davis would want to create, I suppose, radio, television to the punters, but we always had to think that we're broadcasting to 7-10 million people from the roadshow, but we're entertaining. And Steve was a total radio legend, pioneer, entertainer. And, he worked very hard at his craft. I don't think there is any other radio presenter, broadcaster who worked as hard as Steve to bring his craft, and he will be remembered that. He didn't just rock up with a box of records to do his program or the roadshow. He thought about it. He knew what he wanted. He was a master at bringing everything to life. He will be sadly missed. A lovely, kind, generous, genuine person. I feel privileged to have known and worked with him and have him as a friend.
And Mike, one of the things that Steve definitely did was he changed the way we thought about radio. And in the last several decades, there have been many people who've almost tried to copy that formula, and now radio is different because of him. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, he did make it a way of seeing radio. I mean, when John Logie Baird invented television, he went down to the Daily Express, and the editor said to somebody, "Can you chuck this guy out downstairs? He's found a way of seeing radio." And that was John Logie Baird. He said he's found a way of seeing radio. Well, if John Logie Baird hadn't invented TV, someone like Steve would have found a way of seeing radio. You actually didn't need a TV. You felt you were watching something as well. That is very, very clever. That's a great way of doing it. But, you know, we learned our craft at 210, and we had a great boss that let us get away with so much, let us do our own thing, let us experiment. And Steve was very, very good at that. I mean, he was brilliant. It was great to work with. I say, you know, intuitive. We worked together well, knew what the other was going to do, and that's a bonus. And then for both these two new boys that had never done radio before, that were bunged together to both get to Radio Luxembourg and Radio 1 was a real bonus. And sometimes we just looked at each other and thought, wow, you know, what happened there?
So lovely to have your memories and for talking to us this morning. We're going to talk so much more about Steve's legacy and memories from right across the country this morning. But thank you to you both for being with us. Tony Miles there and Mark Reed, really grateful for you being with us today. Now, friends and colleagues of Steve Wright have been paying tributes to the radio DJ who has died at the age of 69.
His family confirmed his death with deep sorrow and profound regret in a statement yesterday.
Let's speak now to fellow broadcaster and friend of Steve's, Tony Blackburn, and also BBC Radio 2 traffic reporter Sally Bozeman. Morning to you both, Tony and Sally. I'm really sorry for your loss, because I know he was a friend and a colleague to both of you as well. Tony, I want to start with you. How will you remember Steve?
Well, I remember him as a great friend, actually. I mean, we got on like a house on fire. We used to, every Friday, we used to meet up, particularly because he did a programme before me, and I used to go in and we used to just make one another laugh. And I had so much admiration for him because he put so much effort, particularly into that afternoon show he did. I mean, he was always in at 9 o'clock in the morning, preparing everything. And we just loved radio, and we used to talk about radio. We even used to, whenever I met him, we never said hello. We used to sing jingles to one another. You know, hello, Steve. Say hello, Tony. Ba 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 bum. And he was just wonderful. And he was just a unique character, a one-off. I mean, I'll never forget. He didn't like going to the dentist. He bought his own dental kit. He used to do his own dental surgery. And he did it quite well until one day it went slightly wrong. He had to go to the dentist. And when he came back, he said, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought. But I'm so much warmth that has sort of come out on social media for him. And I think the thing is really that what you heard was what you got there. He was a proper, wonderful broadcaster. And I used to love listening to him because he was just so good at it.
Sally, it's fair to say, isn't it, that he really did help change the direction of your career because you were such an important part of his show?
Oh, that's kind. Yes, I mean, I joined Radio 2 in 1999, and he was obviously part of the... We more or less joined at the same time. And he was wonderful. It was him, actually, who christened me Sally Traffic. It was his idea. And I think that just showed he had this really inventive, incredible mind that was just amazing. And I hated it at first, but now I've got to love it. And of course, that's how everybody knows me. But it was his idea. And he taught me so much. And they were wonderful years, really wonderful years. And of course, he introduced the idea of the posse on radio, which had come over from America, actually, and had this sort of group of people all chatting to each other and made everybody feel that they were just sitting down in the afternoon and joining in a conversation. It was really a wonderful time for me, and I'm going to miss him terribly, actually.
Sally, was it daunting to join that programme, knowing everything you knew about his career and who he was, to then join that little gang, that posse?
It was, yes, it really was. But the wonderful thing was that because I was quite naive in those days, working with a massive personality like that was a great learning curve for me. Because if I messed up, I mean, he would let me know, but he wouldn't do it in a horrible way. He was one of the kindest men I ever knew. He was so kind, so encouraging in my particular case, and sort of was a kind of a mentor in a way, and helped me become Sally Traffic, I suppose. He was just wonderful to me, and as I say, incredibly kind man, and everyone related to him because he wasn't Mr. Showbiz. He was just an ordinary bloke, and he really resounded with ordinary people. They loved him, and yeah, I'm going to miss him so much. I really am.
Tony, we've heard more than one person say that he was actually really quite shy. What was he like when he had to meet members of his audience and fans?
I think he was okay then, but he was quite a shy person. But he loved what he was doing, and certainly when you went on his show, because sometimes I went on a show to promote this, that, and the other, he'd always make you feel welcome. After he'd done his show, he would hang around and talk to you. And as Sally said, he was just a kind, very warm person, and certainly a part of the Radio 2 team. We'll all miss him like mad. And he had his magic cupboard. I always remember his cupboard in the studio, which was off limits to everybody. He used to lock it. He used to put sellotape over it when he finished his show so that nobody went in it. And one day he left it unlocked, and I saw inside, and there was nothing in it. And I taunted him for ages, saying, "I know it's inside your cupboard." He said, "Nobody knows that." But there was nothing inside it. That was him. He was just a lovable person who was a one-off. He is a one-off. There'll never be anybody quite like Steve Wright, because what you heard and what you saw was what you got.
And it's so recently, wasn't it, Tony, that it was awarded in the New Year's Honours list? Yes. Recently, December of last year, wasn't it? Did he have time to celebrate that?
I don't think so, no, not as far as I know. I mean, the last time I talked to him, he took over Pick of the Pops from Paul Gambaccini, and I used to do Pick of the Pops. And I rung Steve up and said I thought how well he was doing it. And that was the last I spoke to him. And that was, then he got his MBE, but I don't know if he actually I don't think he actually went to the inauguration. As far as I know, I might be wrong there, but I know he was very thrilled to get it.
And Sally,
we're sorry to interrupt. We're all still in a bit of shock about it, actually. It's just come out of the blue to think that he was actually on the radio at the weekend saying goodbye, everyone, see you next week. I mean, and the fact that that is not going to happen is a terribly shocking thing for all of us to absorb, I think, particularly awful for his family as well. But as a radio listener and a person, just the fact he's suddenly gone is really hard to come to terms with.
And Sally,
I think you're right. Sally's absolutely right there. I think it's such a shock, and I just can't believe that I'm not going to be seeing him again, because I enjoyed his company so much. So we are all, really in shock. It was a terrific shock yesterday.
And Sally, is it fair to say he changed how radio works, what a radio presenter should be, how we would perceive them, how they would engage with the public, and what a show on Radio 2 actually could be? I mean, such appointment to listen. You would tune in for the same show every day or every week. He did change the way that radio worked, didn't he?
He sort of did. It was almost like a magazine format where you had these 2 or 3 hours of just him. He was a great interviewer, by the way, interviewing the best people in the world, interspersing that with music, and it was an incredible format. And he did have this connection with the audience, which was, I'm just a normal bloke. Please come into my house and let's have a chat. That was the sort of image he got, or he created. And of course, as I said earlier, he created this idea of having a posse, which had come over from America, really. He was the first person, I think, in this country to use that format. So it was like a sort of gathering of friends every afternoon, interspersed with all these wonderful people coming in and out, and this great music. And he worked so hard to make it perfect, and it really was.
Sally, Tony, thank you so much for sharing those stories with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.